Everyone knows FTX was a fraud. What nobody talks about is how obvious it was, and why nobody stopped it. The balance sheet was a lie that any first-year auditor would have caught. The hedge fund using customer money had a name that should have been a warning. The CEO told 1 million people their money was safe the day before the bankruptcy filing. The smartest money in the world had visited the offices, reviewed the numbers, and written the checks anyway. So the real question isn't how Sam Bankman-Fried stole $8 billion. The real question is who let him. Sam Bankman-Fried grew up in Palo Alto, the son of 2 Stanford law professors. He studied physics at MIT, graduated in 2014, and took a job at Jane Street Capital, one of the most demanding quantitative trading firms in the world. He was brilliant by any measure. But what set him apart, at least publicly, was his philosophy. He preached effective altruism, the idea that the moral obligation of anyone earning serious money was to give it all away. He reportedly wore cargo shorts to board meetings, slept on a beanbag at the office, and drove a modest car. The image was deliberate, and it worked. In May 2019, Bankman-Fried launched FTX, a cryptocurrency exchange built, he said, by traders for traders. It offered lower fees, more sophisticated instruments, and a cleaner interface than its competitors. It grew with extraordinary speed. By January 2022, FTX was valued at $32 billion. Bankman-Fried himself was worth an estimated $26 billion on paper. The most celebrated investors in the world had come running: Sequoia Capital, SoftBank, Tiger Global, and the Ontario Teachers' Pension Plan, which managed retirement savings for 330,000 Canadian teachers. Together they poured over $1.8 billion into the company. Silicon Valley had found its next profit. Before FTX, Bankman-Fried had built a second company, Alameda Research, a quantitative trading hedge fund. Publicly, Alameda and FTX were kept at arm's length. 2 separate entities, 2 separate balance sheets. In reality, they were anything but. Alameda was run by Caroline Ellison, a 27-year-old MIT graduate and Bankman-Fried's former romantic partner. And Alameda had been given something that no hedge fund should ever have: a secret backdoor into FTX's customer deposits. A line of credit worth $65 billion. Drawn, without permission, from the accounts of ordinary people who believed their money was sitting safely in a digital vault. Alameda's finances were built on sand, and they knew it. The hedge fund's primary asset was not cash, not stocks, not bonds. It was FTT, a cryptocurrency token that FTX had printed into existence itself. $5.8 billion worth of FTT sat on Alameda's books as collateral. Think about what that means. FTX had created a token, given it to its own hedge fund as an asset, and that hedge fund was now borrowing real customer money against it. It was the financial equivalent of printing your own currency, declaring it worth billions, and using it to secure a mortgage on someone else's house. The entire structure held together for one reason only: as long as the price of FTT didn't fall, nobody would ever have to know. On November 2, 2022, a journalist at CoinDesk received a document. It was Alameda Research's balance sheet, leaked by someone who wanted the world to see what was inside. The document showed that Alameda's largest asset was $5.8 billion in FTT, the token FTX had created for itself. CoinDesk published the story that afternoon. The crypto world read it and went quiet. Then the questions started. If Alameda's collateral was FTX's own token, what happened if FTT's price dropped? And who else in the crypto industry had just realized the same thing? One person read that CoinDesk report very carefully. Changpeng Zhao, known universally as CZ, was the founder and CEO of Binance, the world's largest crypto exchange and FTX's most powerful rival. Binance had been an early investor in FTX and still held $530 million worth of FTT. On November 6th, CZ opened Twitter and posted a single announcement. Binance would be liquidating its entire FTT position due to recent revelations. He did not elaborate. He did not need to. In the compressed, panic-driven world of crypto, it was the equivalent of a major bank publicly pulling its deposits from a competitor. The signal was unmistakable. The $6 billion withdrawal demand in 72 hours was a bank run, the oldest financial catastrophe in the book. But FTX's customer deposits had been lent to Alameda, which had traded them away. The money simply wasn't there. Withdrawal queues froze. Customer support went silent. Bankman-Fried desperately contacted investors, rival exchanges, anyone who might inject emergency capital. Binance briefly offered to acquire FTX, then withdrew after reviewing the books. What they found inside was so bad they didn't want any part of it. FTX was not merely illiquid. It was hollow. With the company one day from total collapse, Sam Bankman-Fried made a choice. His team had already told him the number. The hole in FTX's balance sheet was $8 billion. There was no rescue coming. The money was gone. And so he opened Twitter and told 1 million people the opposite. FTX is fine. Assets are fine. The customers who read that tweet and decided to wait, who trusted the man they had put their savings with, lost everything. It was not a mistake. It was not a miscalculation. It was a deliberate decision to buy time at the expense of everyone who believed him. FTX filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy on November 11, 2022. Sam Bankman-Fried resigned as CEO the same day. To replace him, the bankruptcy court turned to John J. Ray III, the restructuring expert who had spent years cleaning up some of the most catastrophic corporate frauds in American history, including Enron. Ray had seen everything, but what he found at FTX left him speechless. He told Congress directly, "Never in my career have I seen such a complete failure of corporate controls." FTX, a $32 billion exchange, had no formal accounting department. It used QuickBooks. Key financial decisions for the company were made through a Signal group chat. That chat had at one point been named Wire Fraud. The investors who had funded FTX's rise now scrambled to explain themselves. Sequoia Capital had published a glowing multi-page profile of Bankman-Fried on its own website just weeks before the collapse, calling him a generation-defining genius. Sequoia wrote its entire FTX investment down to zero. The Ontario Teachers' Pension Plan, responsible for the retirement security of 330,000 Canadian teachers, had invested tens of millions of dollars in FTX. All of it was gone. The due diligence that was supposed to protect them, the detailed financial reviews, the site visits, the background checks, had caught nothing. Or perhaps, for people who wanted to believe the story badly enough, it hadn't been looking very hard. FTX had over 1 million creditors worldwide. Teachers in the Philippines who had saved in crypto hoping to send their children to university. Small traders in Nigeria, Brazil, and Vietnam who had used FTX as a dollar substitute to escape inflation. Ordinary investors in America who had trusted celebrity-endorsed advertising campaigns and the promises of a man who claimed to be saving the world. Every dollar SBF had donated to charity had come from someone else's pocket, and they had never agreed to give it. Sam Bankman-Fried retreated to his luxury penthouse in the Bahamas. He gave interviews, posted on Twitter, tried to control the narrative. He had 1 month of freedom left. On December 12, 2022, Bahamian authorities arrested him at the request of the United States government. He was extradited to New York. In the weeks that followed, the people closest to him made their choices. Caroline Ellison pleaded guilty. Gary Wang, FTX's co-founder, pleaded guilty. Nishad Singh, the head of engineering, pleaded guilty. All three agreed to cooperate fully with prosecutors. The man who had preached about trust and community had been abandoned by everyone who actually knew what had happened. The trial began in October 2023 in a Manhattan federal courthouse. Bankman-Fried's defense argued that he had made mistakes, serious ones but not crimes, that he had acted in good faith, that the collapse was a business failure, not a fraud. The jury took less than 5 hours to disagree. On November 2, 2023, exactly 1 year after the CoinDesk leak that had started everything, Sam Bankman-Fried was convicted on all 7 counts of fraud and conspiracy. On March 28, 2024, Judge Lewis Kaplan sentenced him to 25 years in federal prison, one of the longest sentences ever handed down for financial fraud in American history. The FTX fraud was not technically sophisticated. There were no elaborate shell companies, no complex offshore structures that required forensic accountants to unravel. The money had simply been taken, and the taking had been visible to anyone who looked closely enough. FTX survived as long as it did because everyone around it had strong reasons to believe the story. Investors wanted the returns. Regulators had been charmed by political donations exceeding $40 million. Journalists were captivated by the effective altruism narrative. The system that was supposed to prevent exactly this had been given every incentive to look away. Enron had worked the same way. So had Madoff. The names change. The mechanism does not. And it will happen again. Rise and Ruin covers the stories behind the biggest corporate collapses in history, the decisions, the frauds, and the moments that changed everything. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss one. Every story we tell is someone else's warning.